You've probably felt it. That sudden hit of motivation after you take the first step toward a goal. You open the new document, sign up for the course, walk into the gym, or finally hit record. And for a few hours, or maybe a few days, you feel unstoppable. Then it fades, fast. The energy drains. You start negotiating with yourself. You delay the next session, push the goal to later, or shift focus entirely. And without even realizing it, you've traded momentum for a premature sense of achievement. Today, we're going to dismantle that pattern. This episode installs the Premature Victory Protocol, a mental operating system that eliminates false progress and converts early action into sustained execution. The problem is simple but lethal. Your brain celebrates too early. Neuroscience calls it the achievement dopamine loop. It means that the mere act of starting, especially in public or with external validation, triggers a release of dopamine almost identical to the reward you'd get from actually finishing. That initial high tricks your brain into thinking progress has already been made. You feel like a winner. But chemically, your motivation system just spent the reward before the work was done. That's the trap. And it's why so many people stay stuck in cycles of starting strong and never following through. Here's what you need to understand. Premature victory isn't a mindset issue. It's a hardware issue. It's your brain's reward system being hijacked by shallow signals. So to fix it, we don't just need more motivation. We need a protocol that regulates the release of internal rewards with surgical precision. The first component of the Premature Victory Protocol is called Signal Suppression. This is where you eliminate all non-essential rewards after the first step. No posting, no celebrating, no journaling about how great it feels to finally start. The mental command is simple. You silence the applause until the scoreboard moves. Research shows that when subjects verbalize or share intent without measurable progress, they reduce their follow-through rate by over 30%. That means talking about your goals too early can actually sabotage your brain's drive to achieve them. So here's your first move. When you take the first step, say nothing. Make it silent. Treat the beginning as the loading screen, not the finish line. Only reward action that produces output. This single shift installs a performance filter in your reward system, ensuring dopamine is tied to results, not rituals. The second component is called phase locking. Most people make the mistake of starting without defining the phase they're in. They confuse initiation with execution. And because the brain is a prediction engine, if it can't distinguish between phases, it will over-reward any activity that feels like effort, even if it doesn't produce results. To correct this, you define your current phase with absolute clarity. For example, this is phase 1. I am in the setup phase. The only success metric here is daily repetition, not outcome. That specificity resets your mental model. You're not trying to win. You're calibrating behavior. By phase locking your focus, you reduce the friction between expectation and reality. You also shift your neurochemical reward from dopamine to serotonin, reinforcing consistency over novelty. Your next step is this. Define the exact phase you're in, name its goal in one sentence, and write it somewhere visible. That becomes your anchor. Until that phase completes, no switching, no celebration, no change in reward pattern. You're not chasing wins, you're installing circuits. And that's exactly where sustained execution begins. Now that you've locked your reward system to results and defined your current execution phase, it's time to install the third component of the Premature Victory Protocol, delayed validation. This part hacks the feedback loop that typically short-circuits your consistency. Most people seek confirmation after the first step. They crave a thumbs up, a nod of approval, or even a like on a post that says, "I'm finally doing it." But here's the neuroscience. When your brain receives external validation before sufficient neural patterns have formed, it reduces the perceived need to repeat the action. You've just told your nervous system that the job is done, when it hasn't even started. The solution is simple. You delay feedback until the baseline has been built. Think of it like lifting weights. You don't measure results after one rep. You wait until you've completed a full training block. The same principle applies here. You define a baseline, 5 days of repetition, 10 sessions completed, or 1 full module executed. You do not analyze, reflect, or share anything until that minimum output has been produced. The brain is a pattern recognition machine. Until it sees a pattern, it treats every action as noise. Your next step is this. Decide your baseline. Write it down. Commit to it in isolation. Only once it's reached do you allow yourself to evaluate or share. This creates what I call earned reflection. It means your feedback loop is built on real data, not feelings or reactions. And that alone can triple your consistency. Now let's move to the fourth component, internal scoreboard. When you're operating without real stakes, your brain defaults to comfort. And comfort is the enemy of consistency. To override this, you install a visible performance tracker that ties your behavior to progress in real time. This isn't a journal. It's not for thoughts, it's a scoreboard. Clear, binary. You mark completion or non-completion. No emotional content, just signal. Neuroscience shows that visible metrics activate the anterior cingulate cortex, the brain's error detection center. That region is responsible for tracking performance gaps and generating corrective impulses. When you use a visual tracker, you engage that system automatically, creating internal pressure to close the gap. Your move is this: build your scoreboard. It can be a wall calendar, a spreadsheet, or a whiteboard on your desk. Each day, mark your completion and make that mark bold. The bolder it is, the deeper the imprint. Over time, that tracker becomes a mirror of your self-command. If you want elite consistency, you need elite visibility. No scoreboard, no pressure, no urgency. That's why most people stall after the first win. They lack a tracking mechanism that converts action into accountability. You're going to fix that now. You've already installed suppression, phase locking, and baseline delay. Add the scoreboard and you complete the outer shell of this protocol. But we're not done yet. In the next phase, we go internal. You're going to learn how to manipulate your neurochemical drivers directly so that every repetition produces a compound return and the system becomes self-reinforcing. Now we enter the engine room of this protocol, the part that makes it run without friction, neurochemical tuning. Most people unconsciously hijack their own momentum by trying to summon motivation instead of designing for it. But peak performers don't chase energy. They manufacture it through controlled neurochemical releases. Your brain has three levers here: dopamine for drive, norepinephrine for intensity, and serotonin for satisfaction. If you stimulate them in the wrong sequence, you burn out or stall. But if you tune them correctly, you create what I call a compound drive loop. Here's the play. First, you delay dopamine until after action, not before. Most people front-load dopamine through visualizations, announcements, or rituals that feel productive but aren't. You're going to reverse that. The command is this: do the action first, then reward it, even if it's a micro-action. The moment you complete your target rep, whether that's writing a paragraph, filming a take, or making a call, you immediately trigger a short, low-cost celebration, a fist pump, a breath, a check mark, something that tells your brain, this was a win. This triggers a post-action dopamine pulse. And that's what links the behavior to future anticipation. Second, you tap into norepinephrine by applying time-bound sprints. This chemical increases focus through mild stress, but it only activates under urgency. So you install what I call a countdown start. Before each work session, you start a visible countdown from 3. At 1, you begin. This primes the locus coeruleus to flood your system with norepinephrine, sharpening your attention for the first 10 minutes. That gives you a window to get traction. Your next move is to repeat this countdown before every focused block, even if it feels small. Third, you allow serotonin to stabilize the circuit by ending with a reflection log. This isn't a journal. It's not about feelings. It's a 30-second mental scan where you ask 2 questions. What did I do, and what did it move forward? This final step creates a chemical marker that says progress was made and meaning was gained. When you repeat this cycle, action, celebration, countdown, reflection, you train your brain to crave repetition, not to resist it. The loop becomes self-energizing. No more burnout. No more post-win collapse, just clean, efficient momentum. You've now installed the internal architecture of the Premature Victory Protocol. Let's recap your system so far. You've suppressed external reward until output exists. You've locked into a non-negotiable execution phase. You've delayed validation until patterns form. You've built a visible scoreboard to activate performance pressure. And you've tuned your neurochemical drivers to reinforce action automatically. But there's one more fail point we need to eliminate. Even if you build this loop perfectly, it collapses when the goal itself becomes the identity. In the next part, you'll learn how to create an anti-fragile identity layer that prevents mission drift, ego traps, and the self-sabotage that comes from success being your only fuel. Now we attack the final failure point that silently erodes even the strongest protocol: identity collapse. This is the moment where momentum dies not because of a lack of tools, but because the target became your identity. And when the target moves or gets hit, you don't know who you are anymore. Most people unknowingly link their motivation to achieving the goal rather than to executing the system. And that's a trap. When the goal becomes your source of worth, completing step one already makes your brain believe it is won. That's the core of premature victory. But elite performers don't build identity from outcome. They build it from process alignment. Your move now is to create what I call an anti-fragile identity stack. It has 3 levels. First, you define your code. This is the simple, non-negotiable behavior that you repeat regardless of mood or motivation. For example, I solve hard problems daily, or I complete my work before noon. The rule is this: it must be observable, repeatable, and unambiguous. It becomes your micro-identity. The more often you act in alignment with it, the more your brain wires it as fact. Second, you install a dynamic mission statement, but not in a corporate cliché sense. Your statement must be one sentence that defines the kind of friction you exist to convert into growth. Think of it like this: your mission isn't what you achieve, it's what you transform. For example, I convert uncertainty into systems, or I turn complexity into clarity. This dynamic mission detaches your self-worth from one specific project. It ensures that no matter what changes around you, you always have a source of momentum. Third, you lock in an identity dashboard. It's a visible space, digital or physical, where you track identity-congruent actions, not just outcomes. You measure how often you acted like your future self, not how close you are to a result. Did you push the rep when it got hard? Did you publish instead of perfecting? Did you prioritize input over applause? These are the true markers of performance, not likes, not status, not applause, because identity built from validation is always fragile. It dies in silence, but identity built from behavior is unkillable. When you combine your microcode, your transformation mission, and your visible tracker, you create a self-correcting identity loop. When you drift, you don't spiral, you recalibrate. That's why elite performers don't fall off for months. They auto-correct within days, sometimes hours. Because they don't operate from ego, they operate from code. And they protect that code like a system asset, not an emotion. You've now replaced the identity leak that caused your system to collapse after the first visible win. You've moved from motivation to mission, from performance theater to performance mechanics. But there's one final lever. None of this scales unless you embed the entire protocol into your daily routine with zero effort friction. In the final segment, you'll learn how to automate your reset triggers, integrate them into your highest leverage moments, and turn this protocol into a reflex that activates even when your energy is gone. Your willpower is empty, and your environment pulls you in every wrong direction. Now comes the final installation, the part where this entire protocol becomes automatic, reliable, and immune to willpower fluctuations. You're going to build a frictionless integration system that embeds your identity protocol into the architecture of your day. The goal is simple. You never wait for motivation again. You build invisible scaffolding around your behavior so that the right version of you shows up, even when your energy is low and your mind is distracted. Here's how to do it. First, identify your transition moments. These are micro moments in your day when your brain is naturally shifting gears, like finishing a call, walking to the kitchen, closing your laptop, or switching tabs. Most people waste these moments. You're going to weaponize them. Choose 3 that occur daily. For each one, assign a mental command linked to your protocol. For example, when you close your laptop, you immediately run a clarity reset by asking, what would my next decision look like if I had already finished? This primes your brain to act from the future state, not your current fatigue. Second, install a zero-effort queue system. You don't need new apps or complicated tech. All you need is visual anchoring. Place a small sticker, post-it, or icon at each of your 3 transition zones. These are not motivational quotes. These are silent switches that trigger a reflex. The visual must be simple, repeatable, and specific to your new identity stack. For instance, a red dot means reset. A black triangle means publish without perfecting. A green line means input over applause. Every time your eyes hit that shape, your system fires. No decision needed. Third, run the evening recalibration protocol. This is your anchor point for system resilience. Before sleep, pull up your identity tracker and ask 3 questions. Did I act from code? Did I convert friction into action? Did I allow any validation to distort my clarity? Don't write essays, just one-word answers or binary responses. The point is not journaling. The point is repetition. Repetition creates insulation. It teaches your nervous system that identity execution is non-negotiable, even when no one is watching. When you repeat this loop for 7 days straight, the identity stack fuses with your baseline. When you stretch it to 30 days, the premature victory reflex dies. Your brain no longer seeks celebration after the first step. It starts craving completion. That's when you become dangerous. Because now you operate from an unshakable internal code, not external recognition. And while others post wins to feel momentum, you generate momentum silently, relentlessly until the mission is finished. This is the protocol for killing premature victory and replacing it with systems-based execution. You now have the exact tools used by elite strategists, operators, and creators to stay dangerous long after motivation runs out. But if you stop here, you'll relapse. Your brain will default back to celebration loops and the illusion of progress. So you must reinforce this code. Subscribe to Success Code right now, and every week you'll receive a new protocol, refined, tested, and immediately actionable. This is your arsenal. This is your edge. This is where average ends and execution begins.